and welcome. My name is Alexander Chmelka, a research fellow at Communities and Students Together. In this video, I would like to show you 3 possible sources of conflict that can arise in engaged learning initiatives because they have already arisen in our project in Magdeburg, Germany. CaST is all about engaged learning, and one central aspect of engaged learning are partnerships between actors of higher education institutions and local communities. However, despite equal partnerships being a stated purpose of engaged learning, the voices of community actors are still underrepresented in current research. And of course, this makes it difficult for practitioners in the field to assess what to look for when setting up engaged learning initiatives. And that is why this video is referring to community voices, and not just from some community actors, but from official community representatives. In our special case, city councillors in Magdeburg. If you are not familiar with engaged learning or are interested in a general overview of engaged learning initiatives in Europe, I recommend you go on our project's website, which you reach under cast-euproject.eu. And there you click on Download and Intellectual Outputs. Where you will find all of our CaST project outputs, consisting of a state-of-the-art review, a case study compendium, and a pilot project report. Back to the possible sources of conflict. Our empirical evidence comes from city council meetings in which the promotion of engaged learning initiatives was discussed, as well as from the autoethnographic reflection efforts of the students and teachers of one initiative itself. Just like the 177-page long takt documentation of the years 2018 to 2021, consisting an outline of the genesis and development of the project, facts and figures around the work of the students and teachers, an overview of the ever-growing network of partners, supporters and sponsors, and of course the latest contribution from research, including the CaST project. To all those who do not yet know what the takt project is and asking what is takt and why is it so interesting for our consideration of community voices in engaged learning, here comes the answer. The takt is a transdisciplinary teaching project at the Otto von Guericke University in Magdeburg. Each semester, one seminar is offered on the topic of urbanity, urban society, cooperation and co-design. The seminar takes place every 2 weeks in the own premises. That is the takt store, which is provided by a local housing association. The special thing about it is that this room belongs to the students, and this creates a special atmosphere. The students do not sit in a standardized seminar room in the depths of a university building, but in the middle of the city. The first task is always to appropriate the space, to set it up and use it so that it becomes a kind of real-life laboratory. And starting from this base camp, the second task is to explore the surroundings, to develop ideas not only for the place itself, but the inner city of Magdeburg. And, this is crucial, to actually realize these ideas. Making is clearly the order of the day here. The seminar itself focuses on curiosity and direct commitment. And in addition to all the factual and experiential knowledge, it imparts openness and a purposeful approach to the unpredictable. The takt maintains cross-sectoral partnerships. With the Otto von Guericke University itself, from which the project originated and from which teaching assignments, seminars, workshops, and thus ultimately students flow into the project. As partners, sponsors and supporters from the local economy, the housing company Wohnbau and the internet provider MDCC are particularly worthy of mention, as they provide the project with rooms and Wi-Fi. However, the most important partner for our consideration is probably the city administration and, together with it, the city council. That means the executive and legislative bodies of the city of Magdeburg. Now let's focus on the administration of Magdeburg as well as the city council who funded the project in the past years. Particularly due to a change of personnel in the responsible department, the continuation of funding and cooperation between the city and the student project was increasingly called into question. The first time this came to a head was in the form of a newspaper article in the local press in autumn 2020, which denied the project a real impact on the city center and instead focused on the administration's marketing projects. From the ensuing controversy between all partners involved in the Intakt project, three main lines of conflict can be identified. And these are not specific to Intakt alone, but can be applied to engaged learning initiatives in general. The first conflict aspect is the project's evaluation. In the past, community representatives complained that the evaluation of project activities was too late or not available at all to make funding decisions and steering on the basis on this evaluation. Existing evaluations were assessed as not comprehensive enough. On the other hand, it can be stated that the city administration itself does not really know what concrete purpose an evaluation should serve. And this is bad, of course, because evaluations that are done in the dark are time and resource intense without being effective. In addition, if the project is held solely responsible for the evaluation, the results will be possibly biased, making them more useful as advertising than as a steering tool. The second conflict arises from institutional borders, which consists in a clear separation of cultural and economic promotion, even if both areas go hand in hand. Instead, there is jurisdictional wrangling and resource envy between the departments of the administration, but also within the organization of the university. These are representative of major translation gaps regarding logics and interests between departments, organizations, projects, and individuals. And it ultimately leads to a lack of equal cooperation between the municipality, economy, and science. The third line of conflict are political disputes in urban areas themselves. While these are in and of themselves a sign of healthy democratic negotiation processes, they can be accompanied by certain difficulties. If project funding and thus the existence of cooperative projects depend on the goodwill of party political decision makers, this endangers scientific freedom and accuracy, because what is said is no longer what is true, but what yields the largest political majority. At the same time, the project actors themselves become targets of political power struggles. Fortunately, we have not yet experienced direct threats or vandalism in the past, although this cannot be ruled out for the future. It was and still is unclear how the management and administration of the university is positioning itself and whether it is giving its teachers and students the necessary support. Teachers and students sometimes enter new academic territory with such projects, which can lead to exhaustion and feelings of uncertainty or even insecurity. What could be realistic action steps to maintain the partnerships with the community despite the conflict highlighted? A first step would and should be the application of scientific evaluation standards as specified, for example, by DGEVAL, the German Evaluation Society. It is important that the engaged learning partners first agree on what should be the subject of the evaluation, preferably in the form of written document. Orally made agreements have not proven to be robust enough against staff fluctuations. That means there's a risk that a change of staff will overturn the agreed evaluation objectives. A rather simple but crucial basis for evaluations are jointly agreed objectives. Here it is possible to check with relatively little effort whether these have been met or to what extent. However, it is also advisable to set standards here in order to formulate truly auditable goals. Such goals can be generated with the help of the so-called SMART formula, which goes back to the management researcher and consultant Peter Drucker. Goals must be clearly defined, be as precise as possible. The objectives must be verifiable through measurement. This is the highest criteria for an evaluation. Quantitative or qualitative measurement criteria must be agreed upon. Of course, one should not lose sight of what is actually within the realm of possibility. Talking not only about what is possible, but also what exceeds one's own competencies and means, and therefore cannot be expected, is extremely important too. Goals should be so relevant or attractive to all participants that they also have the desire and motivation to achieve them. Especially when it comes to clearly time-limited projects, it is very important to set deadlines for goals. The time for evaluating the goals should also be taken into account. It is of no help if the evaluation is not ready in time to make funding decisions on the basis of it. In order to be able to evaluate the agreed goals appropriately, one always needs a database on which, for example, the measurement can take place. For this purpose, it is advisable to create documentation, such as the one presented here by takt. It is best to do this on an ongoing basis and according to a predetermined form. But it is also possible to summarize documentation over a longer period of time, such as several semesters or a legislative period. The time period for the documentation should also be considered in the SMART goal formulation. With all the goal setting, documentation and evaluation, the actual content-related work should not be forgotten, of course. And this is a frequent problem in practice because time, financial and personal capacities are simply not sufficient to carry out both comprehensively. One way to manage both the content work and the evaluation of this work is to divide the students involved in engaged learning, but also the teachers and, not forgetting the community partners, into groups. While one group takes care of the negotiation of goals, the ongoing documentation and their evaluation, the others have time to implement the goals and produce documentable results. And this has also the advantage that the evaluation is not carried out by the same people whose work is to be evaluated. This could be combined with the promotion and use of academic transdisciplinarity. At probably every university there are courses of study or chairs in which statistics, quality management, social work research or evaluations are taught. Approach the colleagues in charge there. They might be happy about an opportunity to offer their students real-world learning experiences as well. It is rather unlikely that the institutional boundaries built up and stabilized over decades will be torn down by a student learning project. Because of this, it would be more realistic and effective to enter cooperations with persons who are considered to be border crossers between academia, business, culture and politics, because they are active in several institutions. Keep your eyes open for such people, for example in local newspapers, go to local events, use your own networks, both professionally and privately. That means also look for allies outside your immediate work environment. See who else your partners are working with and establish contact with such people. Someone gave me the following advice. You may be small and unimportant like a mouse, but that has the advantage that you can also act discreetly and pursue your goals. And also remember, that many small mice can decompose large stable constructions. Cooperativeness and persistence are virtues when it comes to eating even small holes in institutional border walls. It has also proved helpful in the past to have people from public relations or marketing on your side. These can be people from the university as well as journalists and influencers from the old and new media. They often have good connections to leaders who are concerned about a positive image of their own organization and know how to address different target groups and publics in an appropriate way. And since community representatives are elected by the citizens, it makes sense to improve the public perception of one's own project. Remember what I said about the documentation? Not only can it be useful as a basis for evaluation, but it can also help your public relations and marketing allies to do their job better and make your engaged learning project shine. Photos, video snippets, screenshots of social media posts, short interviews, short stories from everyday life, or audio diary excerpts. All this is useful for both the documentation and the public representation of your engaged learning initiative. One last piece of advice. We should adopt a new mindset in university teaching. It's not that new because it basically casts a different perspective on university spaces as safe spaces. What is a safe space? A space where you can try things out without having to expose yourself to all the risks and dangers that such things entail in public reality. And as strange as it sounds, a martial arts dojo is such a safe space. You can practice defending yourself against attacks without facing a real enemy who wants to harm you. I know from my own experience that this can also result in minor injuries such as bruises, strains, or contusions. But every injury is a stone on the path of learning and success. The harder and closer you train to the reality of combat, the better prepared you are for sporting competition or the serious case of self-defense. Engaged learning must provide such realistic and challenging spaces to prepare students for the realities outside universities. There, negotiations are not always fair and scientific truth dies first, as we all know. But by not only providing training spaces for real-life confrontations, but infusing the training with scientific values and competencies, we combine the best of both worlds and create graduates who can truly move our societies forward. That should be it for now. I hope I've been able to give you some exciting insights into the world of engaged learning. I wish you every success in growing your own initiatives and say goodbye.